Why was her face in the dirt, and why did she refuse to stay there? The mud tasted like metal and humiliation. It filled her mouth, pressed into her nose, smeared across her cheek as laughter echoed above her. Boots circled. Shadows moved. "Stay down." Kenna Graves didn't answer. She couldn't. A heel ground between her shoulder blades, not enough to injure, just enough to remind her where they thought she belonged. Hell Week Day 4. Out of 142 candidates, barely 3 dozen remained. She was the only woman left. The bell sat 50 yards away. Shining, tempting, 3 rings and it would all end. Warm shower, real food, sleep, dignity maybe. Her arms trembled against the mud. "You can stop." The whisper wasn't from the men around her. It was from somewhere deeper. The place inside that counts cost and pain and pride and decides what's worth keeping. She closed her eyes and heard her father. "When they bury you, Kenna girl, that's when you dig." She pushed up slowly. Mud fell from her face in clumps. Her jaw tightened not with rage but restraint. Rage is loud, power is quiet. "I'm still here," she said. No yelling, no drama, just truth. Chief Garrett Maddox stood 20 feet away, arms crossed. A stone monument in human form. 33 years in the teams. Eyes that had seen more funerals than birthdays. For a flicker of a second, something moved behind his stare. Recognition. The morning resumed. Sand, steel, saltwater, bodies breaking, egos snapping, the California sun bearing down like judgment. She moved through the obstacle course with mechanical focus. Over walls, through tunnels, across rope. She didn't look at the men beside her. She didn't answer their comments. Ignored. That word had followed her most of her life. At 11, she stood in a Wyoming valley beside her father, Master Chief Dutch Graves, learning how to steady a rifle bigger than her arms. He was already dying then, though he didn't look it yet. "Breathe in, breathe out," he'd whisper behind her. "Between the heartbeats, that's where truth lives." She had hit a target at 300 yards that day. Impossible for a child. "You've got the gift," he told her quietly, "but one day you'll need it for something bigger than paper." She hadn't understood. Now she did. In the pool that afternoon, full gear dragging her under, she felt it again, that whisper. "Stop. You've proven enough. You're tired. No one would blame you." Her arms carved through the water anyway. Stroke, breathe, stroke. "Warriors aren't born in the spotlight," her father used to say. "They're born underground." When she climbed from the pool, exhausted and shaking, Chief Maddox called her name. "Sniper qualification, 600. It wasn't standard, not here, not now. Her heart skipped. Something was moving beneath the surface. That night, alone in a barracks built for 12 but housing 1, she opened the black metal box she hadn't touched in years. Inside was her father's sealed trident, polished but never worn. A brass compass. And a USB drive labeled Operation Midnight Fall. Her hands shook as she inserted it into her laptop. Password required. She stared at the blinking cursor. Underground. The folder opened. The video showed a dim concrete room in Sevastopol, Crimea, 1992. 7 operatives around a table, young, tense. Her father, and a younger Chief Maddox beside him. The footage jumped, fragments only, faces missing, arguments, then her father holding up a notebook to the hidden camera. "Prophet is the traitor." The video ended. 7 days later, Dutch Graves had drowned during a training accident. Same location. Same week. Her father hadn't died from equipment failure. He had discovered something. And someone had buried him for it. 600 arrived like an execution. 800 yards, 5 rounds. Wind cross-gutting from the southwest. 24 rifles dropped prone. She didn't think about the men beside her. She thought about wind, about heartbeats, about stillness. One shot. Center. Another. Center. 5 rounds, all X-ring. Silence fell across the range. A radio crackled. Send her to Building 7. Building 7 wasn't on any map. Inside waited 3 figures: Chief Maddox, her former Marine instructor Sloane Barrett, and a silver-haired woman with eyes like winter steel. "My name is Commander Vale Ashford," the woman said. She slid a photograph across the table. Operation Midnight Fall. 8 operatives, Soviet nuclear weapons smuggling route, a traitor inside the team. Sterling Caldwell, CIA liaison, call sign Prophet. "He sold us out," Vale said quietly. "Your father found proof." Kenna's throat tightened. "He was killed for it." A new photo slid forward, recent. Prophet alive, older, smiling. "In 48 hours, Vale continued. "He's selling those same weapons to a rogue American faction planning a false flag attack." Kenna's pulse pounded. "You're nobody to him," Vale said softly. "That's your advantage." Kenna felt something shift inside her. This wasn't revenge. This was inheritance. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Midnight." The safe house in El Paso smelled like oil and bad coffee. The team moved with quiet purpose. Chief Maddox, Vale Ashford, Kodiak, the massive, steady machine gunner with surprisingly gentle hands. Preacher, communications expert who quoted scripture before missions. They didn't speak about fear, but it hung there. 3 Soviet suitcase nukes. A U.S. senator. A military colonel. A coup dressed as patriotism. The abandoned mine in northern Mexico loomed like a wound in the earth. Through her scope from a ridge nearly 1,000 yards away, Kenna watched men she'd seen on television discussing detonation schedules as if they were quarterly earnings. Detroit, Baltimore, Seattle. 40,000 casualties. Her breath steadied. The Russians arrived without warning. Spetsnaz. A 4th party. Gunfire erupted. Explosions lit the desert. Chaos swallowed everyone. The nuke sat in the center of it all, indifferent. She could have killed Prophet when he ran. 700 yards, clean shot. Her finger tightened. "Negative," Maddox ordered through her earpiece. "We need him alive." Every part of her screamed to end it. But she shifted her aim. Shot the engine block instead. He stumbled, slower, vulnerable. Above ground, the Russians seized the nukes and fled. Below ground, her team was trapped. She chose without hesitation. "We help the team." Inside the collapsing mine, gunfire echoed like thunder in a coffin. They fought in tunnels older than memory. Climbed a vertical shaft, 120 feet high, with no ladder. Preacher bleeding. Vale shaking but steady. Maddox leading despite age and guilt. Kenna held the rear, covering, firing, refusing to leave last. A grenade bought them seconds. She climbed last. Bullets snapped past her ear. Hands grabbed her vest at the top. She rolled onto desert stone under a sky full of indifferent stars. Alive, but not finished. They tracked Prophet to a private airstrip. He tried to flee. She shot the plane's tire instead of his heart. Inside the hangar, surrounded, he smiled like he still held control. "There's another device," he said calmly. "Already armed under Quantico, 68 minutes." Silence crushed the room. He offered a trade, freedom for the code. Kenna felt the weight of the USB drive in her pocket. "My father copied everything," she said quietly. "Your entire network. Give me the code or it all burns." For the first time, Prophet's eyes flickered. He spoke the numbers. FBI agents disarmed the device with 71 minutes left. Prophet was arrested. The conspiracy unraveled. Weeks later, in a private White House ceremony, Kenna stood in dress uniform. The president pinned the Navy Cross to her chest. Then he handed her something heavier. Her father's Medal of Honor. The truth had surfaced. At Arlington, she knelt before a new headstone. Master Chief Dutch Graves, Medal of Honor. She placed her medal beside his. "I finished it," she whispered. Months later, she stood in formation at Coronado. Bud S. Class 364. One woman among 27 graduates. Chief Maddox pinned her father's trident over her heart. It felt like something returning home. Afterward, she stood on the same beach, where her face had once been forced into mud. 12 new female candidates lined up before her. One fell during training, face in the dirt, shaking, humiliated. The others moved to help. Kenna stopped them. "Let her choose." The candidate pushed up slowly. "I'm still here," the woman whispered. Kenna nodded. "Good. Because that's where it starts. In the dirt. In the doubt. In the moment everyone thinks you're finished. They'll try to bury you your whole life. Push your face down. Tell you you don't belong. Let them. Let them pack the earth tight. Let them walk away satisfied. They won't realize what they've done. Because sometimes what feels like burial is planting. Warriors aren't born in comfort. They're born underground. In pressure. In darkness. In the quiet decision not to quit. And when they rise, they don't rise for revenge. They rise for truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why would a sniper qualification appear in the middle of Hell Week? And why did the chief look at her like he already knew the outcome? The desert air at 600 felt colder than it should have. Kenna lay prone on the gravel, cheek pressed against the stock of the rifle. 800 yards ahead, the target looked like a rumor, a pale smudge against heat-bent air. Around her, 23 men adjusted bipods, muttered calculations, cracked jokes that weren't really jokes. No one spoke to her. Ignored. It was a familiar temperature. "Wind west-southwest, 18 miles per hour, the range master called. 5 rounds, perfect score advances. Fail and you're done." Done. That word carried weight here. Careers ended quietly on this range. Dreams evaporated between heartbeats. Kenna closed her left eye and let the world narrow to glass. Wind touched her cheek. Her father's voice returned, steady as the Wyoming horizon. "Don't chase the target, let it come to you, feel it." She inhaled, exhaled, waited for the space between pulses, the sliver of stillness where noise disappears. Shot 1. The recoil nudged her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the impact bloom dead center. She didn't react. Shot 2. Shot 3. Shot 4. The 5th broke like a quiet promise. When the range went cold, boots crunched downrange. The instructor lingered at her target longer than the others. He keyed his radio. "We have a perfect, Graves, group size under 2 inches. A murmur rippled behind her. She didn't turn around. She felt Chief Maddox's gaze instead, heavy, measuring. "Building 7, the instructor said, "now." Building 7 sat apart from the rest of the base. No windows, no markings, the kind of structure that pretended not to exist. As she approached, a camera above the steel door tilted toward her. The door unlocked before she knocked. Inside, the hallway smelled sterile, government paint, fluorescent hum. At the end, a room waited. Chief Maddox stood against the wall, arms folded, impassive. Beside him sat Staff Sergeant Sloan Barrett, her old Marine Corps marksmanship instructor. The woman who had once told her, "You're good, but being good won't protect you from politics." And at the head of the table, silver hair pulled tight, eyes sharp enough to cut steel, sat Commander Vale Ashford. "Sit down, Candidate Graves." Kenna obeyed. A photograph slid across the table. 8 operators in civilian gear. 1992, concrete wall behind them. Her father was third from the left. Younger, alive, smiling slightly like he knew something no one else did. Chief Maddox stood beside him in the photo. "So you know about Operation Midnight Fall," Vale said quietly. Kenna held her gaze. "Enough." Vale nodded once, as if that answer mattered. "We intercepted Soviet tactical nuclear devices during the collapse of the USSR," she began. 5 suitcase nukes, 2 kiloton yield each. Small, portable, devastating. Kenna's heartbeat slowed. "But someone sold our position," Vale continued. "Someone inside." "Prophet," Kenna said. Chief Maddox's eyes flickered. "Yes," Vale said. "Sterling Caldwell, CIA liaison, brilliant, ambitious, and corrupt." The room felt smaller. "Your father discovered the betrayal," Vale said. "He and Reese Sutton. They gathered proof, intended to expose him after extraction." Kenna swallowed. "What happened instead?" she asked softly. Vale didn't look away. "An explosion in the extraction tunnel. Reese died instantly. Your father went back to pull me out from a collapse. Prophet's men were waiting." Silence stretched. "They cut his oxygen line during a dive inspection," Maddox said finally. His voice was gravel dragged across stone. "Made it look like equipment failure." The words landed without theatrics. Her father had suffocated 400 feet underwater. Alone. Kenna felt anger rise hot, wild. She didn't let it show. Anger makes you reckless. Reckless gets you killed. "Why tell me now?" she asked. Vale slid another photo forward. Recent satellite imagery, a cargo container, border crossing coordinates. "Prophet never stopped," Vale said. "He kept 3 of the devices for 32 years. Kenna's breath tightened. "He's meeting buyers in northern Mexico in 48 hours, Vale continued. "The buyers aren't foreign terrorists." She tapped the tablet screen. "They're American." Images flashed, encrypted messages, intercepted chatter, military call signs. "A rogue faction planning a domestic false flag attack," Sloan added quietly. "Multiple cities, massive casualties, blame assigned to extremist groups, emergency powers invoked." A chill crept into Kenna's spine. "They plan to reshape the country through fear," Vale said. "And Prophet is selling them the match," Kenna finished. "Yes." Kenna leaned back in her chair. "You've known about me," she said to Maddox. "For years," he answered. "You watched me join the Marines." "Yes." "You let me walk into Bud S. without telling me any of this." "You weren't ready." That stung more than she expected. "I wasn't ready," she repeated. "You were angry," Maddox said evenly. "And grief mixed with talent is a dangerous combination." Silence. "You needed to become a warrior first," he continued, "not just a daughter." The words hit something deeper than pride. Ignored, tested, measured. Maybe for a reason. Vale leaned forward. "We need someone Prophet won't see coming. Someone young enough to be invisible, skilled enough to matter, motivated enough to finish what Dutch started." Kenna felt the weight of the trident in the black box back in her barracks. "You want me because I'm expendable," she said. "No," Vale replied. "We want you because you're precise. A beat. And because you're a Graves." That name carried history, sacrifice, secrets buried under medals and silence. Kenna thought about the video, her father holding up that notebook. Prophet is the traitor. He hadn't just exposed the truth. He had preserved it. For her. When do we move? She asked again. Midnight, Maddox said. You're on medical leave effective immediately. Kenna exhaled slowly. This was the fork in the road. She could stay, finish Hell Week, prove something to men who didn't want her there. Or she could step into something older, darker, more dangerous. She looked at Sloane. Is this about revenge? Kenna asked. Sloane's eyes softened. No, revenge burns out, justice sustains. Kenna stood. I'm in. No speech, no hesitation. Just decision. Back in her empty barracks, she packed silently. Her reflection in the mirror looked different now. Still exhausted, still bruised. But focused. She opened the black metal box again. The trident gleamed. For Kenna, when you're ready to dig. She pinned it temporarily inside her jacket pocket, not visible, not official. But present. The compass felt heavier this time when she slipped it into her pack. North doesn't argue, it simply points. She paused at the doorway. Anxiety crept in quietly. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if I lose them too? She let the thoughts come. Then let them go. You don't get to choose fear, her father once told her. You only choose what you do next. At 23:58, she stepped into the California night. Chief Maddox waited beside an unmarked vehicle. Vale sat in the passenger seat, reviewing satellite images. Kodiak and Preacher loaded gear in the back. No dramatic welcome. No ceremony. Just a nod. As the engine turned over, Kenna glanced back once at the faint glow of Coronado. Hell Week would continue without her. The bell would keep ringing for someone else. She didn't need it anymore. The highway stretched ahead into darkness. For the first time since her father's funeral, she didn't feel ignored. She felt chosen. And that scared her more than the mud ever had. Because being buried is one thing. Being planted is another. And she was about to find out which one she truly was. What does it feel like to drive toward a border you're not supposed to cross, carrying a mission that officially doesn't exist? The highway lights faded behind them as California gave way to long, empty stretches of desert. No music, no small talk, just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the weight of what waited ahead. Kenna sat in the back seat, rifle case at her feet, the brass compass resting in her palm. North. Always north. Her father had trusted this instrument when satellites failed and maps lied. It felt steady in her hand, certain in a way nothing else was right now. Across from her, Kodiak cleaned a sidearm with slow, deliberate movements. Massive hands, calm breathing, the kind of man who didn't waste words because he didn't need them. Up front, Vale scrolled through satellite imagery. Her silver hair caught the passing streetlights in flashes. Every few minutes, she adjusted something, zoomed in tighter, memorized terrain like it was scripture. Chief Maddox drove. Silent. Focused. Kenna watched the back of his head and wondered how many nights he had replayed Crimea in his mind. How many times he had surfaced from sleep with water in his lungs and guilt in his chest. 32 years is a long time to carry a ghost. You understand the stakes? Maddox asked suddenly, eyes still on the road. Yes, Chief. If this goes wrong, we don't get rescued. I know. Officially, we're not there. I know. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You scared? She considered lying. Yes. A beat of silence. Good, he said. Fear keeps you sharp, panic gets you killed. The desert swallowed the last signs of civilization as they turned off onto a dirt road that didn't exist on any public map. Preacher, riding shotgun, checked his tablet. Border Patrol shift change in 6 minutes, he said quietly. Thermal drone gap is 9. Vale nodded, window tight. Kenna felt her pulse quicken. Anxiety again. Not about being shot. About failing. About freezing. About proving every whisper right. She closed her eyes briefly and imagined the Wyoming Valley, the wind brushing her cheek, her father's steady hands guiding hers. Between heartbeats. That's where you live. They reached the river, dark, narrow, deceptively calm. The Rio Grande didn't look like a dividing line between nations. It looked like water. But tonight it was something else. It was the point of no return. They moved without speaking, thermal cloaks wrapped around their gear, weapons sealed tight. The water was colder than she expected. It bit into her legs, soaked her boots, crept up her spine. The current tugged. For a brief, irrational second she thought about her father underwater. Oxygen line cut, silence closing in. Her chest tightened. Not now. She focused on Maddox's back, stepping exactly where he stepped, matching his pace, matching his breath. The opposite bank rose slowly beneath her boots. Mexico. No fanfare, no announcement. Just dirt. They climbed into brush and moved south immediately, vanishing into the night like shadows that had decided to walk. 3 hours through desert terrain strips away ego quickly. The temperature dropped hard, wind shifted, rocks shifted underfoot, every sound felt amplified. Kenna took point. It wasn't ceremonial. It was trust. She scanned constantly terrain features, possible ambush sites, vehicle tracks, distant heat signatures. Her mind moved like a grid overlaying the world. She wasn't thinking about being the only woman anymore. She was thinking about angles, about elevation, about lines of sight. Somewhere along the way, the doubt thinned. Determination took its place. At 50 hours, they crested a low ridge. And there it was. Mina Abandonada La Esperanza. The abandoned mine rose from the desert like a wound that never healed. Broken concrete structures, rusted beams, a yawning entrance cut into stone. Vehicles clustered near the main shaft. 2 black Suburbans, 3 Land Cruisers, 2 military Humvees, and a refrigerated truck with its engine idling. Kenna lay prone and lifted her scope. Heat signatures glowed against the darkness. 18 hostiles. Professional stances, controlled spacing. Her crosshairs passed over a tall man in an expensive coat. Prophet. Older, slower, but still upright. She studied his posture. No remorse in it. Assault team moving to eastern shaft, Maddox whispered over comms. Overwatch hold. Kenna exhaled slowly. This was the edge. This was where the buried truth came back to the surface. Below ground, Vale, Maddox, and Preacher slipped into a secondary tunnel, guided by century-old mine maps. Above ground, Kenna and Kodiak settled into their sniper nest. The wind shifted northwest. She adjusted automatically. Through her scope, the meeting unfolded. Suitcases placed on the ground. Radiation symbols unmistakable. One of the buyers stepped forward, tall, confident. Vale's voice cracked slightly in her earpiece. That's Senator Hamilton Voss. Kenna blinked. A sitting U.S. senator. Planning to detonate nuclear devices on American soil. The world tilted quietly. Prophet spoke calmly, gesturing toward the devices like he was discussing real estate. Kenna felt something harden inside her. This wasn't chaos. It was calculated. Then the night split open. An explosion tore through the scene from the south. Vehicles rocked. Gunfire erupted. Black-clad operators moved in tight formation from the darkness. Russian Spetsnaz. A fourth party. Professional, ruthless. Chaos consumed the desert in seconds. Buyers dove for cover. Barlow's soldiers returned disciplined fire. Prophet's security scrambled. The nukes sat in the middle of it all. Indifferent. Kodiak inhaled slowly beside her. Richest battlefield I've seen in years. Kenna didn't answer. Her crosshairs found the Russian team leader. 947 yards. Wind gusting 15. She could break the assault, but it would reveal them. She waited. Below ground, Maddox's voice came through strained. Tunnel collapsed. Russians inside. We're moving deeper. Kenna's pulse surged. This was spiraling. A Russian operator grabbed one of the suitcases. Decision time. She adjusted for wind. Led the target slightly. Fired. The round struck his leg. He dropped the case. Every combatant froze for a fraction of a second. Nothing detonated. The fight resumed. The Russians adapted fast. Within minutes, they secured all 3 devices and loaded them into a tactical vehicle. Packages mobile, Kodiak muttered. Kenna felt frustration flare. They were losing the primary objective. Then Maddox's voice came again. 4 Russians hunting us in tunnels. We're pinned. Her jaw tightened. The choice crystallized instantly. Nukes could be tracked. Her team couldn't be replaced. We helped them, she said. Kodiak nodded once. They abandoned the ridge and sprinted toward the mine entrance. Bullets cracked overhead as they moved. Inside, the temperature dropped, and the air thickened with dust and echoes. The mine swallowed sound and light. Boot prints in dirt. Blood trails. Faint voices ahead. They moved fast but careful. 2 Russians at a junction. Kenna fired first. Double tap, center mass. Kodiak handled the second with a single precise shot. They pushed deeper. The tunnel opened into a cavern. Maddox, Vale, and Preacher stood pinned behind fallen rock. 2 Russians maneuvered toward flanking positions. Kenna and Kodiak took high ground without a word. 2 shots. 2 bodies dropped. Silence fell heavy. No celebration. Just breathing. Preacher's leg bled through torn fabric. Vent shaft 3 ahead, Vale said. Vertical, no ladder. How high? Kodiak asked. 120 feet. Kenna glanced upward into darkness. The Russians were regrouping. Time was gone. Maddox started climbing first. Rock crumbled beneath his hands once, but he adjusted. Kodiak followed. Vale. Preacher gritting his teeth. Kenna stayed last. Rear security. Gunfire erupted from the tunnel. She fired methodically, suppressing advance. Reload. Fire. 1 Russian fell. 3 more advanced. A grenade arced from her hand. Explosion filled the chamber. Dust and screams. She grabbed the rope thrown down from above and began climbing. Arms burning. Legs shaking. Bullets sparked against stone below her. Halfway up, her strength faltered for a split second. Anxious. What if I fall? You don't fall. You climb. She forced breath into rhythm. Hand grip pull. Near the top, Kodiak's hands locked onto her vest and hauled her the final feet. She rolled onto desert stone beneath a sky wide and cold. Alive. Below them, the mine burned quietly. The Russians were gone. Prophet was gone. The nukes were gone. But her team was intact. Kenna lay on her back, chest rising hard, and stared at the stars. For a moment, exhaustion threatened to drag her under. Broken. That word crept in quietly. They had lost the devices. The mission wasn't complete. But Maddox sat up beside her. Still here, he said. She turned her head toward him. Still here, she echoed. Sometimes survival is the first victory. The night wasn't over, and neither was she. How do you chase a ghost who has spent 32 years perfecting his escape? The desert was quieter now. Too quiet. The gunfire had faded into distance, swallowed by miles of open land. Smoke from the mine drifted low against the horizon, a dark reminder of what had slipped through their fingers. 3 nuclear devices were moving northeast in the back of a Russian tactical vehicle. Prophet was on foot, and somewhere in Texas, a summit full of military leadership was unfolding without knowing how close it had come to annihilation. Kenna pushed herself upright, legs protesting. She felt it now, the exhaustion she'd been outrunning. 50 hours awake. Adrenaline fatting. Doubt creeping in. Did we fail? Vale was already on the satellite phone, voice steady but urgent. This is Commander Vale Ashford. Authentication code Sierra Victor 7. We have confirmation of 3 Ra-115 devices mobile Russian operators heading northeast through Chihuahua. Uploading coordinates now. She listened, paused, jaw tightening. Yes, I understand jurisdiction. Override it now. She ended the call and looked at the team. FBI is scrambling assets, border interdiction, air surveillance. They'll track the nukes before they hit Russian waters. Will they? Kodiak muttered. They will, Vale said firmly. It wasn't blind optimism. It was faith in systems she'd once helped build. Kenna wasn't thinking about the nukes now. She was thinking about the man who cut her father's oxygen line. She pulled out the small encrypted tracker Preacher had planted on Prophet during the initial exchange. In the chaos, she'd almost forgotten it. The signal blinked steady. 4 miles northeast. Moving slowly. Airstrip, she said. Maddox leaned over her shoulder. Van Horn private strip, 15 miles. He's running. Of course he is. They moved again. No rest. No complaint. Just motion. As they hiked through uneven terrain toward the airstrip, Kenna's thoughts grew louder. You almost lost the nukes. You almost lost the team. You hesitated. She replayed the moment her crosshairs had rested on Prophet's head. One clean shot. It would have been simple. Clean. Permanent. Her chest tightened. Would that have made you feel better? Or empty? She didn't know. And that uncertainty scared her more than gunfire. The airstrip appeared in the gray pre-dawn light like a secret that had grown tired of hiding. One hangar. One narrow runway. One Cessna Citation, jet warming its engines. Prophet stood near the cargo hold, placing luggage inside with infuriating calm. He looked smaller than she imagined. Older. Fragile. But his posture still carried arrogance. He saw them at 50 yards. Recognition flashed across his face. Not fear. Recognition. As if he'd expected this moment. He ran. Kenna dropped to a knee, rifle up. 200 yards. No wind. Perfect stability. Her breathing slowed automatically. She could end 32 years of rot right now. Negative, Maddox said sharply over comms. We need him alive. Her jaw clenched. Alive. Always alive. She shifted her aim. Front tire. Fired. The jet lurched as rubber shredded and metal scraped. Prophet changed direction instantly, sprinting toward the hangar. They flanked and entered simultaneously. Weapons raised. Light slicing through darkness. He stood in the center of the hangar with his hands raised, breathing hard but smiling. Impressive, he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, untouched by panic. You have your father's discipline. Kenna kept her sight steady on his chest. On your knees. He didn't move. Or what? He asked softly. You'll shoot, you need me. Silence pressed in. He was right. She hated that. There are contingencies, he continued. Plans within plans. You found 3 devices, congratulations. Vale stepped forward slightly. What do you mean 3? Prophet's smile widened faintly. There was a 4th. The word landed like a detonation. Kenna felt her pulse spike. Where? Maddox demanded. Quantico, Prophet replied calmly. Under the main conference hall, International Military Summit, 2,000 attendees, 70 minutes remaining. Kenna's stomach dropped. He was either bluffing at the highest level or telling the truth. Vale pulled out her phone immediately, scanning headlines. Her face drained of color. The summit is real, she whispered, happening now. Kenna's mind raced. 70 minutes. That's not enough time to interrogate. Not enough time to transport. Not enough time for bureaucracy. Prophet watched them carefully. You have a choice, he said. Arrest me and waste precious time, or let me walk, and I'll give you the disarm code. He believed he still held power. That was his addiction. Control. Kenna felt something shift inside her. Her father hadn't just left her proof of betrayal. He'd left leverage. She stepped forward slowly, lowering her rifle slightly, but not fully. You made one mistake, she said quietly. Prophet tilted his head. You underestimated him. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket and held it up. My father copied your network, transactions, contacts, blackmail files, 32 years of rot. His smile faltered just slightly. That's impossible. You destroyed his official report, she continued, not his insurance policy. Silence thickened. You give us the code, she said evenly, and this stays buried. You walk into prison with your empire intact. A pause. Refuse and I release everything. Your allies, your offshore accounts, every co-conspirator. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Prophet stared at her. For the first time, fear flickered behind his eyes. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of erasure. Of losing legacy. Of being exposed. Kenna saw it clearly. Her father had always understood the difference between punishment and consequence. The code came out in a whisper. 627398184. Vale repeated it into the satellite phone instantly. Quantico Underground Hall, device confirmation, code 627398184. They waited. Seconds stretched like wire. Kenna felt her heartbeat in her ears. This is it. This is where history shifts. Vale closed her eyes. Then opened them. They found it, timer stopped, 71 minutes left. The entire hangar exhaled. Prophet sagged slightly. Not defeated by violence. Defeated by exposure. You won't kill me, he said to Kenna quietly. You're too much like Dutch. She studied him. For years she had imagined this moment as fire. As fury. As release. Instead, she felt something different. Clarity. You're right, she said, I won't. She stepped closer. I'll do something worse. FBI helicopters thundered overhead. Dust swirled through the hangar. Agents poured in, weapons trained. Prophet didn't resist. As cuffs closed around his wrists, he looked at her again. You think this changes anything? He asked softly. It changes everything, she replied. He was escorted out. Gone. Just like that. The ghost that haunted her childhood was flesh and bone in federal custody. As the adrenaline faded, something unexpected crept in. Not triumph. Not joy. Emptiness. She stepped outside into the growing light. The sky was turning pale orange. Maddox approached quietly. "You did good," he said. She nodded, but her voice felt distant when she spoke. "It doesn't bring him back." "No," Maddox agreed. They stood in silence for a moment. "I should have saved him," Maddox added softly. Kenna looked at him. "He wouldn't want you carrying that," she said. He gave a faint, humorless smile. "That's not how guilt works." She understood that. She'd carried her own version for years. What if I'd asked more questions? What if I'd opened the box sooner? What if I'd been ready earlier? But standing there in the early morning light, she realized something. The mission hadn't been about revenge. It hadn't even been about redemption. It had been about truth. And truth had surfaced. The helicopters lifted off with their prisoner. Sirens faded into distance. The desert returned to stillness. Kenna looked down at the compass in her hand. North. Still steady. Still certain. For the first time since she'd found that video, the noise in her head quieted. The buried truth was no longer underground. And neither was she. But as the sun rose higher, she felt another weight settling in. What happens after justice? What fills the space where anger used to live? She didn't know yet. But she was about to find out. What happens when the war is over, and the silence is louder than the gunfire? 2 weeks later, Kenna stood in a quiet room inside the White House. No cameras. No press. No applause. Just a handful of people who understood how close the country had come to tearing itself apart from the inside. Her dress uniform felt heavier than body armor. Across from her, the president spoke carefully measured words about courage, integrity, sacrifice, about a plot dismantled, about lives saved. 2,000 at Quantico. 40,000 in 3 cities. Numbers that would never make headlines because they never happened. That was the strange part. When you prevent disaster, there are no ruins to photograph, no smoke in the sky, just absence. She accepted the Navy Cross with steady hands. "Petty Officer Kenna Graves," the president said, "your actions preserved the integrity of this nation and exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power. We are in your debt." She nodded. But inside, she felt something complicated. Proud. And hollow. The next box was smaller, but it carried more gravity. "Master Chief Dutch Graves," the president continued quietly, "posthumous Medal of Honor for valor during Operation Midnight Fall." Kenna's breath caught. The medal rested in her palms, ribbon deep blue, stars bright against the fabric. 32 years of silence, reduced to medal and recognition. She imagined her father at 28, standing in that concrete room in Crimea, already knowing the cost of truth. He hadn't hesitated. Neither had she. But the difference between them was time. He never got to see justice surface. She did. Later that afternoon, she stood at Arlington. The headstone was new. Clean. Honest. Master Chief Dutch Graves. United States Navy SEAL. Medal of Honor. 1964, 1992. Truth buried is truth waiting. She knelt, placing her Navy Cross on the grass for a moment beside his stone. "I finished it," she whispered. The wind moved gently across the rows of white markers. Flags stirred in quiet rhythm. For years, she had carried anger like a compass that only pointed backward. Now that the truth was out, she felt untethered. Relieved. And strangely uncertain. Who am I without the mission? The question lingered longer than she expected. Behind her, footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn. "You did him proud," Chief Maddox said softly. She stood. He did this, she replied. I just followed the map. Maddox nodded once. He left breadcrumbs, you walked the path. There was less weight in his voice now, not gone but lighter. Guilt doesn't vanish overnight. But sometimes justice lets it breathe. Weeks passed. Investigations expanded. Arrests multiplied. 47 co-conspirators across intelligence, military and political sectors. Operation Cleansing Dawn became a case study in corruption thwarted, classified, redacted, whispered. Kenna returned to Coronado quietly. Hell Week had finished without her. Her class had graduated without her. But the commandant's office called her in on her first day back. You have full credit for time served, the commander said. Exceptional service designation. You can resume Bud S where you left off. She met his gaze. I'd like to finish properly, sir. He studied her for a moment. Most would take the fast track. I don't want most, she replied. He nodded once. Report tomorrow. The sand was colder than she remembered. The Pacific still brutal. Sleep deprivation still merciless. Some candidates looked at her with curiosity now. Some with respect. Some with resentment. She didn't seek any of it. She simply worked. When the doubts came, and they still came, she faced them differently now. Before, she had trained to prove she belonged. Now she trained because she chose to. There was a difference. She still felt anxious before evolutions. Still questioned her limits. Still wondered if her body would fail before her will did. But the anger was gone. In its place lived something steadier. Purpose. Graduation day arrived without fanfare. 27 candidates stood in formation. One woman among them. Kenna's uniform was crisp, boots mirror polished, posture unwavering. Chief Maddox stood near the podium. Vale and Sloan watched from the back. When her name was called, she stepped forward. Instead of a new trident, the commander held an older one. Worn. Battle-marked. This trident belonged to Master Chief Dutch Graves, he said. It was earned in blood and service. Administrative injustice denied it proper recognition for decades. He stepped closer. Today that is corrected. He pinned it above her heart. The metal felt warm against her chest. Not heavy. Right. Welcome to the teams, he said quietly. Hooya, she answered. Simple. Earned. After the ceremony, she walked alone down the beach where months earlier her face had been shoved into the dirt. The tide rolled in, steady and indifferent. She crouched and let sand run through her fingers. She remembered that moment vividly. Mud in her mouth. Boot on her back. Laughter above her. Stay down. She almost smiled. They thought they were burying her. They didn't understand seeds. Behind her, a familiar voice called out. What's next, Ghost? Kodiak approached, hands stuffed in pockets, grin faint but real. Vale and Maddox walked beside him. Sloan followed, arms crossed, eyes observant as ever. Kenna stood. I want to build something, she said. Like what? Vale asked. A training program, Kenna replied, for women entering special operations. Maddox raised an eyebrow. You planning a revolution? Not loud, she said, not flashy. She looked back at the ocean. Underground. Sloane's lips curved slightly. Meaning? Meaning we build them where it matters, Kenna said. In the dark, in the doubt, in the moments no one sees. Vale studied her carefully. You're serious? Yes. Kodiak chuckled. You just survived a coup and nuclear standoff. You sure you want to go back to mud and screaming candidates? Kenna's expression softened. That's where it starts. Months later, 12 women stood on that same beach before sunrise. Different backgrounds, different stories, same fire. Kenna walked slowly in front of them. "You're not here to prove something to anyone else," she said calmly. "You're here to find out who you are when it gets hard." The training was brutal. Cold water immersions, obstacle courses, sleep deprivation, endless repetition. Not because they needed to suffer, but because pressure reveals truth. On the fourth day of a particularly punishing evolution, one candidate fell face first into the sand. Exhausted, breathing hard, on the edge, the others instinctively moved to help. Kenna raised her hand gently. "Wait." She crouched a few feet away but didn't touch her. The candidate's fingers dug into the sand. Shaking, humiliated, angry, Kenna saw herself there. The whispers were probably the same. "Quit. You've proven enough. This isn't worth it." The candidate's shoulders trembled. Then slowly she pushed up. Mud streaked her face. She looked at Kenna through fierce, exhausted eyes. "I'm still here," she said hoarsely. Kenna nodded once. "Good." The ocean wind moved through the formation. 12 women standing taller now, understanding something that can't be taught in a classroom. "They'll try to bury you," Kenna said quietly. "In this program, in your careers, in life." She let the words settle. "They'll push your face down and wait for you to quit." Her gaze moved across each of them. "Let them." A pause. Because sometimes what feels like burial is planting. The sun rose behind them, light stretching across the Pacific. Kenna felt something settle in her chest. Not anger. Not emptiness. Hope. Her father's story no longer ended in silence. It lived forward. In truth. In discipline. In the quiet strength of those who refused to stay down. War had shaped her, but it did not define her. What defined her was the choice, over and over, to rise. And this time, she wasn't rising alone. Have you ever wondered what finally replaces anger when it has nothing left to burn? It wasn't a battlefield that answered that question for her. It was a hospital room. 3 months after the summit, after the medals, after the headlines that never mentioned her name, Kenna stood beside a narrow bed at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, watching a young corporal relearn how to close his hand. Nerve damage. IED blast. 22 years old. He clenched his jaw every time his fingers refused to obey. "I used to outshoot everyone in my unit," he muttered, staring at his uncooperative hand. "Now I can't even hold a damn pen." Kenna didn't offer a speech, didn't offer a promise. She just pulled up a chair. "I couldn't finish a pull-up my first week at Bud S," she said quietly. He glanced at her sleeve, at the trident. "That's different." "No," she replied. It felt the same. Broken. Embarrassed. Angry at her own body. She watched him try again. The fingers trembled. Moved a fraction. Stopped. He exhaled sharply, eyes glassy. "Stay with it," she said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. He tried again. A little farther this time. And in that sterile room with no gunfire and no countdown clock, she felt something shift. This was the part no one trains you for. After the mission. After the justice. After the enemy is in cuffs. What do you fight then? The answer came slowly. You fight for the ones still fighting themselves. Her underground training program had grown quietly. 24 women now. 2 had washed out. 1 had quit. Not shamed. Not ridiculed. just honest about their limits. Kenna had learned something unexpected about leadership. Strength wasn't dragging someone across a finish line. It was standing still long enough for them to decide to rise. One evening, after a brutal cold water evolution, she found one of the candidates sitting alone by the lockers, boots off, head down. Ignored. That familiar feeling hung in the air. "They still don't take me seriously," the candidate said without looking up. "The guys, even some of the instructors." Kenna leaned against the wall. "Do you take yourself seriously?" The candidate hesitated. "I'm trying to." "That's enough for now." Silence. Then the question Kenna had once asked herself. "How do you stop caring what they think?" Kenna let out a soft breath. "You don't," she said. "You just care more about something else." The ocean roared faintly outside. "I cared about proving them wrong," she continued, "for a long time. And now I care about proving myself right." The candidate looked up slowly, something steadier in her eyes. That night Kenna drove home alone. Her house in Coronado was small, sparse, quiet. On the mantel sat the Navy Cross. Beside it, her father's Medal of Honor. And between them, the old brass compass. North. Still steady. She picked it up and turned it in her palm. For years, it had pointed her toward vengeance. Then toward truth. Now it pointed toward something quieter. Legacy. Not the loud kind carved into marble. The living kind. She thought about profit. About the trial that would likely end in a federal supermax prison. About the testimony she'd given without raising her voice. He had tried to look at her the same way he did in the hangar, searching for rage. He didn't find it. That unsettled him more than anger ever could. In the end, he wasn't defeated by a bullet. He was undone by exposure. And by a daughter who refused to become what he expected. Weeks later, Kenna received a letter. Handwritten. From the corporal at Walter Reed. "I closed my hand all the way today," it read. "Took 3 months, still hurts, but I did it. You were right, stay with it." She folded the letter carefully. Her chest tightened not with grief. With pride. Not the loud, chest-thumping kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. One morning before sunrise, she ran the beach alone. No formation. No cadence calls. Just breath and sand and tide. Halfway down the stretch where her face had once been shoved into the dirt, she stopped. Kneeling, she pressed her palm into the sand. Cold. Grainy. Unforgiving. She remembered the humiliation. The anger. The voice that told her she didn't belong. She smiled faintly. Belonging had never been the point. Becoming was. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't turn. "Thought I'd find you here," Maddox said. He looked older now. Softer around the edges. Less haunted. "They approved the expansion," he added. "Your training program, official funding. It'll still be selective, but it won't be invisible anymore." Kenna stood slowly. "You okay with that?" he asked. She looked at the horizon. The line where ocean met sky. "For now," she said. He studied her carefully. "You ever think about stepping into command?" She considered it. The weight of responsibility. The politics. The scrutiny. "I think about impact," she replied. "Command's just one way to get there." Maddox nodded. Dutch would have hated the politics. She laughed softly. He would have ignored them. They stood in companionable silence. "You know," Maddox said after a moment, "when they shoved you into that mud, I almost pulled rank." She raised an eyebrow. "Why didn't you?" "Because I needed to see what you'd do." She met his gaze, and he didn't hesitate. You chose to rise. The words settled deep, not because they were praise, because they were true. The next class began 2 weeks later. 30 candidates this time. Kenna stood before them, not as a legend, not as a symbol, just as proof. You will be tested, she said calmly, not because we doubt you, but because doubt will find you anyway. The wind lifted strands of her hair. You will be underestimated. A few exchanged knowing looks. You will be told to stay down. Her voice softened. When that happens, you have two choices. She paused. Stay buried. Silence stretched across the sand. Or rise. No shouting. No dramatic music. Just a truth offered plainly. That night, alone again, she placed her father's trident back into its case. Not because she didn't value it, but because she no longer needed to carry it every day. His legacy wasn't metal. It was momentum. Before turning out the lights, she looked once more at the compass. North. Steady. Certain. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was chasing it. She was aligned with it. Sometimes justice is loud. Sometimes it explodes into headlines and handcuffs. But sometimes it's quiet. It's a young corporal closing his hand. It's a candidate standing back up in the sand. It's a daughter choosing truth over vengeance. They tried to bury her once. They pressed her face into the dirt and waited for surrender. What they didn't understand was simple. Some things aren't buried. They're planted. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply rises.